You asked, we listened. One of our social media followers posed this question in response to our video about how to beat your competition. How do you get more of the favor of God? Listen today to hear our answer. Hey, lady bosses, are you working even after putting the kids to bed but still not getting results?
Are you tired of spending money on ads that aren't getting engagement?
Do you feel burdened that you aren't fulfilling your purpose in life because you are so consumed with work?
I'm your host, Brooke Bolts. I'm an attorney and founder of Bolts Legal. I started my business and in 1 year was bringing in 7 figures and am now bringing in multi-7 figures.
And I'm your co-host, Rachel Bolts, owner of Bolts Media. I've helped many businesses build their online presence and increase their revenue through digital marketing.
Want to hear how we did it?
We are here to help you achieve your goals personally, professionally, and spiritually.
So kick off your high heels, sit back, and let's ignite that passion.
We're Miss Biz, where we're putting the Miss in biz.
Let's get biz done.
Last week I had the opportunity to travel to North Carolina on a family vacation and go to see the play Unto These Hills. It is performed by the Cherokee Indians on the Cherokee Indian Reservation, and it tells the story of how the Europeans came to America and pushed the Cherokee out of their land. And one of the scenes stood out to me because it was the Cherokee Council conferring on whether to fight back against the American army. And what they ultimately concluded is that the Americans had much more sophisticated weapons than the Native Americans did, and so they chose not to fight back but to seek out a more peaceful resolution. And so I applied that to today and realized that even still today that the countries who have the most weapons or the most sophisticated weapons are still the world superpowers, and those are still the countries to be feared. And this is why I think we work so hard to keep certain countries from getting nuclear weapons, is because if they have as strong of weapons as we do, then we lose our dominance and our control. And so I realized that that same philosophy still applies today. But when you take that philosophy and you apply it to your personal life to see what can be learned from it, it doesn't sit well. Because if you use the American example, which was take it by force and push people out of their land and come at me, I come at you 10 times harder, then you're kind of thinking, is that really how I want to live my life? And it just doesn't seem to align with our principles as Christians. And so I looked to the Bible to see what could be learned there, and I realized that it was one place where consistently the bigger armies and the better weapons did not win. And so there's some examples of that I wanted to share. So the first example is Gideon versus the Midianites in Judges 7. Gideon started with 32,000 men, but God told him, you have too many soldiers, send them home. And so he sends home some, and then he sends home more, and he dwindles down his army from 32,000 to now 300. And they defeated the Midianite army, which was much bigger and was described in the Bible as numerous as locusts. And they did a surprise night attack, and of course Gideon and his 300 men won that battle. And so that is just one example of where the smaller army prevails. And it's interesting because they were a much bigger army, but God intentionally told Gideon to make his army smaller, not bigger.
Yeah, I think that's a great example because logically speaking, if someone were to say, lower the men in your army and you'll do better, what would you think? You would think you're crazy. That's a suicide mission, essentially. But they were obedient, and it just goes to show you how God's strategy really is the ultimate victory there, and how that favor can just completely change any potential outcome that you could even try to imagine. The second example we have is a classic example that we see often, but it's also important to keep reminding yourself of it, and that's David versus Goliath. And the reference that we're referring to comes from 1 Samuel 17. But Israel's army was intimidated by the Philistines because of Goliath. David was only a shepherd boy with no armor and defeated the giant with a sling and a stone, turning the tide for Israel.
Yeah, so this is a great example of where having the more sophisticated weaponry did not equate to winning the battle. Another example is in 2 Chronicles 20, and it's Jehoshaphat versus the Moabites, Ammonites, and Meunites. And in this example, King Jehoshaphat faced a massive enemy coalition, and instead of fighting with swords, they prayed, worshipped, and trusted God. And God caused the enemy armies to turn on each other, leaving Judah to gather the plunder without a single casualty.
Yeah, worship can definitely be a weapon when God is in control. Another example is Hezekiah versus the Assyrian army. The Assyrian army was the superpower of the day and surrounded Jerusalem. And Hezekiah prayed, and in one night, the angel of the Lord struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers.
I mean, there are just so many examples. Another one we hear of, even as kids, Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho. In Joshua 6, Jericho was heavily fortified. It even had massive walls. And Israel did not attack with traditional weapons. Instead, they followed God's instructions, which was to march around the city walls every day for 7 days and then blow trumpets and shout. And when they did that, it caused such a fear and unrest within Jericho that the walls collapsed supernaturally.
Another example is Deborah and Barak versus, is it Sisera, I think? Sisera, one of those. Sisera commanded 900 iron chariots, the ancient equivalent of tanks. Israel's smaller force, led by Barak under Deborah's prophetic leadership, and defeated them after God sent a torrential rain that bogged down the chariots.
And the last example is Israel versus the Arameans. And this is in 1 Kings 20. Israel's army looked like, the Bible calls it, 2 small flocks of goats, was how small their army was compared to the huge Aramean forces. And 2 times God gave them victory to show his strength and his power. So there's just so many examples where the smaller, weaker, less fortified army in the Bible is the winner. And so what we take from that is that the size of the army is not the determining factor. The determining factor in the Bible is who has the favor of God.
And in order to figure out how you can get more of that favor from God, you have to study those who are in the Bible to figure out what are the key elements that made this successful for them. So that's what we're going to be going over now.
And actually, I made a chart about showing a number of the men in the Bible and how they had favor of God and in what ways. So if you'd like a copy of that, just send us an email through the Miss Biz website, go to the contact page and just type favor of God chart, and send us a message and we'll be happy to send you that. But so the favor of God is the determining factor And I posted a video about this on social media, and someone commented with a question and asked, well, how do you get more of the favor of God? And so that is what led to this topic today, is to talk about those things. And some of these things may seem like, yeah, I know that, I know to obey the Bible and things like that. But I think if you can look at it with a different perspective, because it's not just doing these things because the Bible says to, or doing these things because they make you feel good or whatever, but really, if you do these things consistently and in combination with each other, then you grow closer to the Lord, and in turn, He has greater favor on you and on your business, to the extent that now you can walk in alignment with Him and have the confidence that everything's going to work out just fine when it comes to your business and your personal life, because you know that His favor is on you in everything you do, and you don't have to have the same fear or concern or anxiety anymore.
Finding guests for a podcast can be difficult sometimes, so Brooke and I wanted to let you guys know that we are available to appear on your podcast.
We also enjoy speaking at events. So if you have an event coming up, these jingles can go on the road.
Simply go to missbiz.com/contact, and in the subject line, write podcast guest or event speaker, and we'll reach out to you to further coordinate.
So the first way to increase the favor of God, according to biblical examples, is to walk in obedience to God's word. The key verse that demonstrates this is Deuteronomy 28:9, which says, "The Lord will establish you as His holy people if you keep the commands of the Lord your God and walk in obedience to Him." So obedience opens the door for blessings, and disobedience blocks them. So the Lord gives us the 10 Commandments to follow, and we should be continually making sure that we are living our lives in accordance with those. And then even the other commands and the laws of the land and things like that, we should be making sure that we are trying to eliminate sin as much as we can from our daily lives.
Also, we got to quit questioning God. When God puts stuff on our heart that we feel is from Him that we need to do, we need to make sure that we're obedient and we do this. I've heard from countless people, especially in the church, where they felt led to tithe a certain amount or donate to a specific cause, and they didn't even know how they were going to pay their electricity bill that week, but they did what the Lord put on their heart, and then for whatever reason, a couple days later, they would end up getting a check in the mail for either that same amount or more sometimes. So it's so true that when the Lord puts stuff on our hearts, we got to stop questioning Him. We just have to trust Him and obey and know that He's in control and He's working for our favor in the background.
Yes, love that. So number 2 is to seek God wholeheartedly. And the key verse for this principle is Jeremiah 29:13. That says, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." So favor often follows intimacy with God. And so like how Moses found favor by meeting with God face to face, he was setting aside that time where he was seeking out God. He was going up on the mountain and dedicating that time, taking away all distractions and focused purely and totally on God. And so I think, and we've talked about this in another episode not long ago, where you really have to set aside that time to do nothing but be in relationship with God, to pray and to listen, more than anything else, really to listen to what God is saying to you. So if you are seeking Him, then the Bible says that you will find Him. And so I believe that in doing that is a way that you will receive more of His favor on your life.
And really take the time to reflect, how much time are we truly spending with God? You know, there's a difference between just going to church on Sunday and getting some water sprinkled on you compared to being in the Word, spending that alone time, like truly praying with God, and making sure that you're talking to Him throughout the day as well.
Yeah, I definitely know that there's been times in my life where I would read or pray more out of a sense of obligation than out of a sense of desire. And I think you can definitely look at your own life and determine where you're at right now. Are you spending time with God because it is something that you know you need to do, and so you just read? There's even times where I can tell the difference where I'm reading my Bible quickly or my mind is completely distracted during that time versus the times where I'm really focused and really just seeking stronger relationship and greater revelation. And so just getting to that place where you enjoy the time with God, I think when you start to enjoy it and look forward to it and really feel like it's a necessity in your daily life, is the place you want to get to. So if you're still in that place where you're like, I'm doing this because I made a commitment to, and so every day I'm spending 15 minutes or whatever, then you're not there yet. But you're on the right track. You're doing the right things. You just have to have a heart check to have a greater intentionality and really get those distractions out of the way.
I think that's where prayer comes in. I'm a huge fan of praying before you read the Bible and asking God to clear your mind and help you to focus solely on His Word and to help the key elements that He wants you to hide in your heart today and make that message be known, and not only make it be known, but also to help you throughout the day to learn how to incorporate these values. So I think kind of making that a habit as well and asking God for help in that regard is something that can assist you in getting on that path.
So number 3 is to live righteously and with integrity. So I think this is similar to following God's commands, but it's not quite the same, because there are all those things. You can live by the commandments, but living righteously and with integrity is a little bit different, because I think that comes down to how you treat people. I think that comes down to the decisions you make when nobody's looking, and really the state of your heart and how much love is in your heart. So the key verse for this principle is Proverbs 3:32, which says, "For the Lord detests the perverse, but takes the upright into His confidence." So favor is closely linked to righteous living. And so this is, again, eliminating sin from your life as much as possible, but also living in a way that treats others as you would want to be treated, and just really living a life that exemplifies His love.
Yeah, so take a minute and look to see, like, what are the motives behind some of these actions? Where is this coming from? If it's sin that you're having a hard time eliminating, then what do I need to break this habit? Like, what is causing me to sin? Is there something broken inside of me that is causing me to do those things? Or if your intentions are not always pure, think about, why aren't they? Why don't I want that? And ask God for help. Ask God to work on you and to heal your heart, mind, and emotions so that you can be righteous and full of integrity.
So the 4th principle is to be humble. And the key verse is James 4:6, which says, "God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble." And humility attracts God's help, and pride pushes it away. We know there's story after story as well where as soon as the Israelites started to get a little cocky or a little full of themselves and go into battle thinking that they were the biggest and the baddest and the best, is when they would lose. Mm-hmm. And so in order to have the favor of God, you have to have a mindset and truly feel in your heart that everything you have is from Him, and that everything you do is to glorify Him, and that it's not to raise you up individually or to make you look better, but it's to advance His kingdom. And so that's another heart check that we have to consistently be doing, especially when we start to see success.
Do you love the Miss Biz podcast?
Because we love you.
Here's 3 things you can do to show your support.
1, write us a review. Apple, Spotify, and Google My Business are the best platforms to write a review.
2, follow us on social media. Our handle is @MissBizPodcast.
3, join our Facebook group, Miss Biz Nation, for exclusive content and behind-the-scenes footage. Also, ask questions related to your business and discuss topics from our episodes. Yeah, you know, we have to be dependent on God. At any minute, second, hour, whatever, it could easily be taken away from us. It could have taken 20 years to be able to get to this level, and in half a second it can be taken away. So we really need to kind of take a step back and realize that God is in control of everything, and we need to rely on Him and be dependent on Him because He's the one in control.
So the 5th principle to increase God's favor in your life is to show mercy and generosity. The key verse that exemplifies this is Matthew 5:7, which says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." Also, Proverbs 19:17 says, "Generosity to the poor is like lending to the Lord. He repays with blessing." So we see examples of this even in Jesus' parable about the Good Samaritan, where those who show mercy and generosity are blessed. And so this is another area that we can improve in, generosity and giving of ourselves, both our time, talents, and treasures, to increase God's favor in our lives.
I think mercy can sometimes be one of the more difficult ones too, when we're just looking at our lives. Some of us struggle with forgiveness, but that also encompasses mercy. So again, getting in the Word, spending alone time with God, that is going to be a critical element in order to really be able to show mercy and to give generously from the heart.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, it brought to mind something for me that I've dealt with recently, which is I had some resentment, a lot of resentment in my heart about some of the doctor's decision making on my own cancer journey. And I had been, as a lawyer, it's natural for me to think about filing lawsuits. I file lawsuits all the time, and don't usually file them on my own behalf, on other people's behalf, but when it came to thinking about the possibility of filing a lawsuit on my own behalf, I had an inner struggle and debate with myself and with the Lord whether what the right thing to do was, and I really didn't have clarity on whether to pursue any kind of legal course of action or not. But I was talking to a friend and hadn't told her anything about the fact that I was contemplating any type of legal action, but I just started telling her the story, and she interrupted me halfway through and goes, "You have to forgive that doctor." And it kind of just took me by surprise, because most of my friends, honestly, when I tell them this story, they're like, "Oh, I can't believe that," they're like advocate, they're like my cheerleaders, and like, yeah, they need to pay, you need to get them back, they shouldn't have done that, whatever. And this one friend, I just barely started telling the story, and she's like, she could see it already, and just had the way I was describing, she's like, "You have to forgive that doctor." And that really hit me, and I thought about it later. And later, it was funny, because later that day, she had asked me about my stomach scar, and so I showed it to her, and she goes, "Now I'm gonna have to forgive that doctor." because it's I've been through a lot, and it's not pretty, what I've gone through. And I just didn't have decisions weren't given to me to make, and I wish they had been. But when she kind of just called me out and was like, you got to forgive that doctor, something shifted inside of me to where I almost immediately stopped thinking about legal action and just released it to the Lord. Because at the end of the day, what's going to come from legal action? Some money, maybe. And what is that really going to do? I have thought about maybe writing a letter to the doctor and just kind of expressing my opinions so that she knows how I feel, but also maybe so she could make better decisions with other patients moving forward. But when it comes to mercy, as you were talking, and unforgiveness and things like that, since I have released that, I've had a lot more peace in my heart and peace in my life, and just kind of let it go.
It'll eat you up, that's for sure. And it's not always to let go and let God take control, because we kind of want to hold on to those things. But it's important to remember, especially in terms of forgiveness, that forgiveness really is about you. It's not about the other person. Half the time, the other person either doesn't even know that you're upset, or it doesn't impact them because it's not directly influencing them. So really, by holding on to all of that negative feelings, you're really doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
And you'll feel so much better once you give it to God.
I heard, I listened to the Bible recap, which is it's like the Bible in a year, and she gives little devotionals each day. But one of the things she said today was the word peace in your heart, or heart of peace, something like that. And I just all of a sudden thought, yeah, like that is what we all really are seeking, is to have a heart of peace. And we think that we're seeking, or we think we're seeking that through having money, or through having material things, or through being able to go on vacation, to be able to enjoy life, to have time. We think that we're seeking all those things, but at the end of the day, what we really are seeking, what we really need, is to have a heart of peace. Because if you look at people who have been celebrities in the past, who've seemingly had everything this world could offer, if they didn't have peace in their heart, they became addicts. Some of them committed suicide. Some of them overdosed. They just had complete unrest. And some of us look at that like, how could that be? How could you have all those things and still be unhappy? And it's frankly because their heart did not have peace. They were probably wrought with guilt and memories and trauma and things that have happened in their past, and they just didn't have that peaceful heart and peaceful mind, which is what we really need to have a fulfilling life. So the sixth and final principle to increase God's favor in your life is faith and trust in God. And I mean, in the New Testament, faith is what it's all about. And the key verse is Hebrews 11:6, which says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. So many who found favor, like Noah in Genesis, or Mary in Luke, lived in faith and trust examples. They lived in faith and trust. And so faith is not an easy thing to have. It's probably the hardest of all of these, is to have faith. But Jesus says it over and over and over. Your faith has made you well. And so to find favor, we really have to believe those things that we don't see and have faith.
And continue to have faith as well. That can be the difficult one. Just think about like Moses being stranded in the desert for 40 years. Like, I'm not even 40 years old. And he was out in the desert for that long, and just the amount of faith that he must have had must have been incredible.
And so faith is where it's at. So these 6 principles, hopefully you can write them down and keep that list with you throughout your day, and just go back and first recognize that the favor of God is really what we should be seeking above all. And here is the ways that the Bible teaches us that we can do that. So each day, remind yourself, am I doing these things? Can I do them more? And how can I improve a little bit each day?
We appreciate you and are honored to be on this journey with you. We can't wait to help you, to encourage you, and show you how to grow personally, professionally, and spiritually.
If you found Miss Biz helpful, please leave a review and share with others.
You can follow us on social media at Miss Biz Podcast.
For legal questions or services, please visit boltslegal.com.
And for digital marketing needs, please visit boltsmedia.com. Let's get biz done.